Which city is better to visit, Hong Kong or Singapore? These two cities are cities that often people consider for their first visit to Asia. It makes sense because they're both former British colonies. It makes sense because many people in these two cities speak English. They're both major business and financial hubs, and they're both major shipping hubs, and so they're very well connected to the world, and so they're great cities for first-time visitors to Asia. I've been to both Hong Kong and Singapore numerous times, and when I was just most recently in Singapore a few weeks ago, I couldn't help but compare the two cities in my head and thought, well, let me do it more than just in my head. Let's do it here on a live stream. And so I'm going to be comparing Hong Kong versus Singapore in 17 different areas. I've got a scoreboard back here, so we'll keep score, and we're gonna see which one is better to visit, particularly if it's your first time in Asia. All right, so the first thing before we get into the different ranking areas is I want to talk about the location. Where are these two places? Because while they're both in Asia, they're in very different parts of Asia. If we start with Hong Kong is located right here at the southern kind of central tip of mainland China. It is a little peninsula. If we zoom in on it just a little bit, Hong Kong is this little tiny kind of landmass. Right here is the border. Shenzhen, China, is the city to the north. And then just across the bay is Macau, which is the former Portuguese colony that was also kind of at the same time as Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong, compared to Singapore, just right off the top, is often considered the more authentic Asian city, less friendly than Singapore, and a bit crazier. Now, Singapore is generally friendlier, more sanitized, with more pleasant surroundings. It is also far away from Hong Kong. It is 2,500 kilometers away from Hong Kong. It is at the southern end of the Malay Peninsula, so it's on the south side of Malaysia. It is this island right here. Johor Bahru is the closest Malaysian city. You can head over there on a land crossing, but if we zoom out, we can see Singapore is also right next to Indonesia, and kind of pretty popular for Australians on their way to the rest of the world, or vice versa, people on their way to Australia, this little island nation right down here. All right, so there's no ranking, or there's nobody wins on location, but that's where they are. One might be better for you if you happen to be closer to those two things, but the first area that I'm definitely gonna score points on with them and is about getting in, about particularly their airport. So this is area number 2, getting in. Now, first let's talk about Hong Kong. The airport in Hong Kong is generally regarded as one of the best airports in the world. It is built on this island right here, and before the pandemic, this airport was actually the busiest airport in Asia of all the airports in Asia before the pandemic. It's really easy to get in from Hong Kong Airport into Hong Kong. There is a train that goes almost every 15 minutes, and it takes just 24 minutes to get into central Hong Kong, right into the center of the city. You can also come in through land via Shenzhen that we saw on the map earlier, or you can take a ferry from Macau, or there's also a long bridge that you could take a bus from. Okay, how does Hong Kong Airport compare it to Singapore Airport? There's a picture of Singapore Airport, and when I said that Hong Kong was one of the best in the world, well, Singapore Airport, it's not just one of the best. Singapore Airport is the best airport in the world. It has been voted best airport in the world for years and years running. Hong Kong has been falling steadily every year. Hong Kong last year was 20th according to Skytrax, and then this year it's 33rd. And so Hong Kong, I think with just the city being closed off from the world and everything like that, has fallen from grace as one of the best airports in Asia now. But back on to Singapore. Singapore has the world's largest indoor waterfall in an airport, not just the world's largest waterfall in an airport, but the world's largest waterfall indoors. The airport has a butterfly garden, it has cheap and good food, it has great lounges. It's not quite as easy to get into central Singapore's business district from the airport. You can take the train, the MRT, but you got to transfer and it takes a little longer. But it's a 20-minute and $20 taxi ride during normal hours of the day. Or you can also get in by land from Malaysia. So, who's going to win in getting in? I think this one's going to go to Singapore. By the way, I got scores right here. Hong Kong is in blue and Singapore is in red. And so, there we go. Ding, ding, ding. 1 point for Singapore. Singapore pulls ahead in the lead. All right, let's go on to area number 3 to compare these two, and which is in size. Hong Kong has a population of 7.5 million people on a landmass of 1,100 square kilometers. Compare that to Singapore. Singapore has a population of about 6 million in a landmass of 700 square meters. And so Singapore is actually more dense, but Hong Kong feels much more crowded. And that's probably because much of Hong Kong is relatively undeveloped. Like all the developed parts of Hong Kong are in small little areas, and then it's green and open in the rest of it. And so Singapore just feels less busy as you go around because people are spread out and the buildings aren't as dense. I give no rating to size, but I am going to give a rating to number 4, which is city vibe. Let's talk about what it feels like to walk around Hong Kong and Singapore just as someone exploring the city. Singapore has preserved many of its colonial buildings. This building is the National Museum of Singapore, and it's neat to have these things right next to high-rise buildings. I find also just going around Singapore, it is very green, it is very clean. Singapore people tend to smile more and are generally happier than people on the streets of Hong Kong, including the taxi drivers. Hong Kong taxi drivers, I find, are quite rude by comparison to the Singapore taxi drivers. Singapore people tend to stop and chit-chat more, and Hong Kong people always seem to be in a rush wherever they're going. Now, in Hong Kong, there are some beautiful parts, like the peak on the top of the island is pretty beautiful. There's some beautiful beaches, but other places like in Kowloon are really crowded and really ugly with just high-rise after high-rise after high-rise. The air, I think, is much fresher in Singapore. Just the way the city is built, there's a lot more air that comes in and out. Hong Kong, it really gets that heat island stale air effect. Singapore also has like really strict emission controls on cars. You got to be like really wealthy to buy a car. You can only own it for 10 years before you got to like get another car. And so the cars don't really smell that much. And way less honking in Singapore. Hong Kong has a lot of people using their car horn. Like, I think they just want people to know they're there. They use the car horn. But Singapore, very few people honk, so it's much quieter walking around the streets of Singapore. But back onto Hong Kong, if you're just like wandering the city, I feel Hong Kong is a cooler city to wander because it's like, definitely it's a city that just developed out of lots of people building things, like these like night markets here. This is a night market in Kowloon, like a neat street just to wander around. You can wander around alleys and just see Hong Kong by wandering and not really having any destinations. Singapore, on the other hand, being this like master planned built thing, you tend to go much more from development to development or attraction to attraction than you actually do just kind of like wandering and bumping into things. If you have kids, Singapore has way more attractions for kids and is way more kid-friendly. And so that one, we have kids. And I also think just from a like cleanliness and the vibe of being clean, friendly, Singapore is gonna get a +2. All right, so now we got Singapore up to 2, Hong Kong at 0. But you know what? People on the live stream, let me know what you think if I'm getting this wrong. If you like the vibe of Hong Kong better, let me know. Or if you like the vibe of Singapore better, let me know as well. All right, let's talk about getting around. Both have a really good MRT or subway system, mass rapid transit, clean, fast, and efficient, and a good network of buses. By the way, MRT, MTR. I can't keep it straight in Asia where they do the R's and the T's and the T's and the R's. they both have a really good transit system. And they also have a good network of buses owing to their British colonial heritage. A lot of double-decker buses that go around the city, which are super great for sightseeing. Now, in addition to just subways and buses, Hong Kong also has a couple of other cool modes to get around. In particular, they got this streetcar, this tram, that is probably my favorite way to get around Hong Kong. This is informally known as the Ding Ding because it has a little bell on it instead of a horn that when they want to let people know to get out of the way, this thing goes by and goes ding 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 ding. And for like just a couple Hong Kong dollars, this is a super great way to like sightsee around Hong Kong. You just sit on the second decker of this bus and go back and forth for a couple hours, which is why like I think Hong Kong, they're like none of these like sightseeing bus companies. I mean, look, there's probably some everywhere, but they're not very busy because you might as well just get on the public Ding Ding and it's the best sightseeing bus there could be. Hong Kong also has this thing called the Star Ferry that we're going to see in a little bit, but these really neat green ferries that go back and forth from Hong Kong Island to Kowloon Island. I find Singapore's transit system is generally less crowded. But Hong Kong does also get a plus because it has that direct train from the airport. So, who's going to win for getting around? Hong Kong is going to get its first point. All right, Hong Kong 1, Singapore 2. Hugh Won says, can we influence the points you get? You know, you can because when I did this outline, I wrote who I thought was winning. I didn't total up the points, and so I don't actually know who's going to win at the end. So yes, you can influence who's going to win at the end and influence the points that I give. Brandon is calling it right now. Singapore with a landslide. We are gonna have to see. Canyon Overlook says, doesn't Hong Kong have long escalators that go up a hill? That is indeed one of the coolest parts of Hong Kong, is the central mid-levels escalator that, yes, takes you up or down depending upon which way rush hour is, but it only goes one direction. It goes down the hill in the morning and then it goes up the hill to take people back home in the afternoon. All right, let's talk about food now. And I've broken food into two different categories. The first one is cheap food. And by the way, when I'm talking about food, I'm thirsty. What am I drinking today? Today, Chris is drinking a blood orange hibiscus lemonade, aptly from a place named Lemonade. That's right, there's a kind of like, they call it a modern cafeteria and here in Orange County, and they've got pretty good lemonades in addition to tasty food. All right, so on the cheap food end, Singapore is like known the world over for its wide variety of hawker food, which is food from basically like street vendors that have been put into communal areas. And this is like a chicken rice from one of those hawker centers. And Hong Kong is really known for its good Cantonese cuisine. Singapore's hawker centers are amazing, and they serve much more than just any one particular variety of food. Lots of different ethnicities of food you'll find all together under one roof. Hong Kong has food courts, but they're really no comparison to these hawker centers in Singapore that have hundreds of food stalls all in one place. I do think Hong Kong has more like international cuisine, like Mexican tacos. Why you'd want to get Mexican tacos in Hong Kong, I'm not really sure. And so for the cheap food, Hong Kong, it's all in a place or like a single place of business. And so they got to pay rent for their establishment. So they just can't, I find, get as cheap and tasty as the hawker centers where there's so much competition and so little overhead. And so with that, for cheap food, Singapore is going to go up a point. Ding ding! Hong Kong 1, Singapore 3. Now let's go to the next food category. I said I broke this down in two, which is luxury food. And both Singapore and Hong Kong have really good high-end or fine dining, but I think Hong Kong has more. And in particular, just looking at some data, I looked at the number of Michelin stars in Hong Kong versus Singapore. 94 restaurants in Hong Kong have Michelin stars, 52 restaurants in Singapore have Michelin stars. And so there's almost double the number of restaurants with Michelin stars in Hong Kong than there are in Singapore. And in particular, Hong Kong, I really love the dim sum. And dim sum, while it's often known as kind of a like a cheap maybe or low end thing to have for brunch. Like there's some pretty high end dim sum in Hong Kong as well. Like places where, you know, if you look on the picture here, you get like the gold chopstick rests, the kind of places where your teapot, you know, they put in a candle to keep your tea warm. Really nice dim sum. And like, sure, you can get good dim sum in Singapore, but Hong Kong is really the world's heart for dim sum. And I have a funny story to tell you about eating dim sum in Hong Kong and just like the level of high-end fine dining there, and to tell you the kind of schmuck that I am when I go to eat out at really fancy restaurants. So in Hong Kong, one of the Michelin restaurants is a 3-star Michelin restaurant in the Four Seasons Hotel that serves dim sum for lunch. And so when I went to Hong Kong with my mom probably a decade ago, we made they had reservations available. We made a reservation. We got there for lunch at like 2 o'clock. I show up and I am dressed kind of like this, actually. I've got shorts on, kind of like this, t-shirt. And when I go up to the front and say, oh, we have a reservation for, 2 at 2 p.m., they look at me and they say, sir, do you happen to have any long pants? And I'm like, back at the hotel. How far away is your hotel? Would it be possible for you to go and change into your pants? No, we're staying at the GW Marriott. It's kind of far away. What size are you? And so I tell them my pant size, and then they come back with a pair of pants in a bag and tell me there's a changing room over there that I can change into. I did have to give them the pants back afterwards, but that's the level of fine dining that if they have a dress code, you need to wear pants. Some of these restaurants in Hong Kong actually have pants to give to you. And so with that, Hong Kong is going to get the +1. What? Hong Kong is going to get the +1 for luxury food. It is now Hong Kong 2, Singapore 3. R&D Bros says, what is the best time to eat at restaurants in Hong Kong? Yeah, Hong Kong's really busy to eat. And so like end of lunch, like 2 p.m. I think is the great time. 2 p.m. to get lunch, or 10:30 a.m. and then dinner, get an early dinner, get like dinner at like 5 o'clock or something like that. One of my favorite dim sum restaurants in Hong Kong is Maxim's City Hall. In Hong Kong City Hall, they have this like massive banquet, kind of high-end dim sum restaurant. And boy, OC Girl and I, we went there on a Saturday once, and that was a mistake. We waited like 2 hours or something to be seated there at like a prime time of like 11:30. So it was delicious, but I will probably never do that again. Question of mid-tier restaurants. Which one would you give a point to? I don't know. I don't eat at maybe that many mid-tier restaurants. I just eat at like the cheap foods or the high-end foods. But I guess if I had to give a point to the mid-tier restaurants, it might go to Hong Kong because I think there's more of them. I think Singapore really tends to straddle cheap eats or like high-end dining, and it doesn't have a big middle-of-the-road restaurants, where Hong Kong does have a lot of restaurants in the middle tier. Okay, let's go on to number 8. Cleanliness. Which one's cleaner? Singapore is more cleaner. I'll just right off the bat, Singapore is the cleaner of the two. I find in Singapore, when it comes to like food safety, they're also just much more careful. When I go to Singapore, I don't really give a second thought to anywhere that I'm going to eat. I see a place sells food, and I order food because they just look clean and they're well inspected. In Hong Kong, it's tough to do. In Hong Kong, you look at some of these establishments and you're like, I wonder how long those cockroaches have been there. I mean, in Singapore, it's really rare to see like even litter on the streets. But in Hong Kong, the streets are definitely like gritty and grimy and dirty. The movie Blade Runner was like themed after Hong Kong. It was actually a lot of it was shot in Hong Kong. And so Hong Kong definitely has that like dark, dirty, steamy, sleazy vibe to it. In certain parts of the city, the high-end business district is nicer and glassier and cleaner. But even then, I wouldn't call Hong Kong a pristine city by any length of the term. You know, if you're the kind of person who will suffer a heart attack if you see cockroaches running on the floor or on the streets, then Singapore is your answer. And even not Singapore is just going to go ahead and get the point for cleanliness. All right, let's talk about hotels. Everybody here knows I love hotels. That was one of the reasons I love both Hong Kong and Singapore. They have great hotels. And both of them, the accommodation is pretty expensive. You're not going to find a lot of great bargain accommodation. That's not to say you won't find bargain accommodation. It just won't be great. But I think of the two, Hong Kong is the costlier of the two when it comes to hotels. But with that cost comes even more service that's like over the top, particularly in like the luxury segment. One of my favorite hotels in Hong Kong is the JW Marriott Hong Kong. And at this hotel, at the front door that you see here, they don't just have one person to open the door for you. They have two people to open there are two doors, and there are two people that stand there, one on each door, just to open the doors for you. That's all they do. They stand there to open the doors for you. Oddly, the last time OC Girl and I stayed at JW Marriott in Hong Kong, it was seemed like entirely staffed by Russians. I don't know why, if the Russian mob took it over or something. But in Singapore, and this isn't a picture of the hotel that I'm going to talk about. This is a picture of the Marina Bay Sands, which is one of their big casino hotels, probably Singapore's most famous hotel. On this last trip, I stayed at the JW Marriott Singapore, which is owned by the same guy that owns the JW Marriott Hong Kong. And in Singapore, no double doors, no doorman. They just put an automated door in that opens when you go in. And it is a nice hotel, but it wasn't nearly as over the top as the Hong Kong one was. I think that Singapore hotels are more flashier than Hong Kong hotels. Hong Kong hotels are they try to be more luxurious with the service, but Singapore gives you more color and light. Hong Kong, their rooms generally are smaller, but I think where Singapore gets the advantage is that if you're looking for budget accommodations, they're going to be better in Singapore, because Singapore just doesn't have a awful, dirty, grimy low end. You're going to get something at the low end that's still inexpensive and clean and safe, where in Hong Kong, if you're booking a hostel, you might very well end up with something like this. And if you're like, Chris, that can't be a hostel. This sign right here actually says hostel, third floor of this building. And there really are a lot of quite sketchy hotels and accommodation in Hong Kong. And so, with that, Singapore is going to get the win right there. Grant says, OMG, OMG, yeah, they're really, some places in Kowloon, you look at that and you look at these things, say hotels, and you're like, OMG. June asked when I went to Singapore if I stayed at the Raffles Hotel. I went to it and walked around it, but I did not stay at the Raffles Hotel. The Raffles Hotel is considered the highest, I don't know if it's the highest end of Singapore, but it's the original hotel in Singapore. Chicken Marsala says Chungking Mansions. Yeah, this one's the Mirador Mansions, but there's also the Chungking Mansions, which has some really sketchy hostels in it too. And Kathy says they're staying in a hotel in DC and they have a cold shower. I guess if you were in Singapore, a cold shower wouldn't be that bad, but in DC, that'd be bad. And Kathy says they're going to New York, staying at the Hilton, so that should be much better. I hope so. All right, let's talk about the weather. And in Hong Kong, Hong Kong has seasons. In Hong Kong, there's a winter, albeit a short winter. It doesn't snow in Hong Kong, but there's spring and there's autumn. And Hong Kong is really quite pleasant between November to April. It's not very hot. It's not very humid. It doesn't rain too much. Great time to go. Singapore, on the other hand, is 365 days of perpetual summer. And not mild summer, but hot, humid, oppressive summer. The heat and humidity in Singapore is best described as mind-boggling if you're not from a hot and humid place, and I'm not. I'm born and raised in San Diego, California, which is really quite pleasant and dry temperature-wise. And so when I go to Singapore, I sweat like a madman. And, Singapore's just kind of a place where, like, when you leave your air-conditioned hotel, you just are immediately hit by a wall of heat every day of the year. And so, a lot of people, when they compare these two cities, they'll say something like, all these reasons why they like Singapore better, but then they're like, but I just couldn't stand the heat. And that alone made me like Hong Kong better because the weather was better if you go during that season. So if you're somebody that can't stand heat, then you probably want to avoid Singapore, or you want to go to Singapore and just plan not to do any of the outdoor activities. Don't go to the zoo, don't go to those things where you'll be in it. I mean, it's even hot at night. So Hong Kong definitely gets the +1 in the weather category. All right, we got Hong Kong 3 and Singapore 5. Grant says Singapore is like Nolans. And Jay says you will sweat places you've never... Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd say Singapore has a lot in common with Bangkok in Thailand. And, when I went to the Royal Palace in Bangkok, Thailand, my shins were sweating. My shins. Boy, like when this part of your leg starts to sweat, that's when you're like, it is hot, hot, hot. Brandon says, I don't like humidity. Andy says, it's like Florida. And Chris says, you seriously take a drink of water every time you inhale. You do. And that's just not me who needs to drink a lot on the live stream, but it is really thick and humid. And Yip Animation says, 80 degrees in Singapore is nowhere near the same as 80 degrees in Orange County here in California. Much more humid and hot. Codge Full of Love has been using Hawaii as my base for humidity. I'm told that's nothing compared to other places. Sticky, just thinking about Singapore. It is nothing compared to Singapore or Bangkok. And Michael says there's too much moisture and it's not dissipating due to the heat, so the sweat and water condenses. I love June's comment here. It's okay. I'm Singaporean. People from Singapore hate the weather too. Thank you, June. Yeah, and this is like, I love the Singaporean accent when y'all talk about the heat, and it's hot. It's very hot and humid. There's this like hot and humid is how I'd say it, but that's that like British, like it's hot and it's humid, which is all the Singaporeans talk about their weather. The weather. Let's talk about language. In Hong Kong, you have to know a good amount of Cantonese to understand everybody speaking. While English is a main language in Hong Kong, English is not the primary language in Hong Kong. Cantonese is the primary language in Hong Kong. And so things like taxi drivers, you'll find many of them in Hong Kong don't speak English. In Singapore, on the other hand, it is rare to find somebody who can't speak English. So the majority of people in Singapore do speak English, including the cab drivers. In Singapore, like all the cab drivers speak English, although with the heavy Singaporean English accent. And there was a gift shop I went to, had this plate that says, let's learn Singlish. And so this is what they call it. They call it Singlish, where like they actually combine some of the like Chinese or Malay words along with English. And so you can see ola, onla. You'd like add la at the end, which makes like anything a Singaporean English. But like that's another one, and June can correct me if I'm wrong, but I find most Singaporeans are actually kind of like proud of their Singlish. Just like Hawaiians know in Hawaii they speak Pidgin English, but they also kind of like embrace it as just like one of the cultural elements. But if you only speak English, then Singapore +1 for you. If you speak Cantonese, then you know what? You might consider a point the other way. But chances are, if you're here watching this show, that English is your primary language. So we got Hong Kong 3, Singapore 6. All right, let's talk about the cost. From a cost of living perspective, Singapore is tied with New York City as the most expensive city in the world to live in. Hong Kong ties with Los Angeles for 4th place. Honestly, they're pretty similar in price. I think it's possible to do Singapore cheaper than Hong Kong if you eat all of your meals at hawker centers, but if you're looking to go like the cheapest possible and you're gonna stay at those hostels in the Mirador mansions that I showed you, you could definitely do Hong Kong cheaper. But since Hong Kong officially gets the ranking of tied 4th place with Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is way cheaper than New York City, Hong Kong is gonna get the +1 point here. All right, so now we got Hong Kong 4, Singapore 6. We're going to number 13 to rank these in, which is talking about things to do. And on the note of like things to do in Singapore. Oh, by the way, I talked about Raffles hotels. This is the Raffles Hotel. So this is the original hotel in Singapore. It's known for the Singapore Sling, which is like one of the most famous drinks in Singapore. But Singapore has like a lot of great things to do: zoos, museums, shopping malls, parks, and like each and every one of them is like world class. You know, Singapore doesn't just have an airport, it has the world's best airport. It doesn't just have a botanical garden, it has the world's best botanical garden. It doesn't just have a zoo, it has the world's best zoo. And so I feel like almost any attraction that Hong Kong has, Singapore has one that's just better. Now, if you're looking for something that like really has a Asian feel or Asian vibe to it, you might find Singapore to feel too Western, to feel too clean, to feel too manicured, to feel too corporate, to feel too businessy, which might not be what you're looking for in an Asian destination. Right, there's the Singapore Zoo. You know, it's pretty clean and corporate looking there on the outside. But Hong Kong definitely has much more of a Asian authenticity to the city with like temples and Buddhas. The thumbnail you saw of this video, the big Buddha, that's like a huge Buddha in Hong Kong that you can go to. And in Singapore, the kind of like big statue they have is the Merlion, which is a half mermaid, half lion kind of thing. You know, which one feels more Asian, the big Buddha or the Merlion? By the way, at the Big Buddha in Hong Kong, you can get like a really good, I'm not vegetarian, but you can get like a really good vegetarian lunch at like the monastery at the foot of the Big Buddha, which I've done a couple times. Hong Kong has more mountain terrain, so if you like hiking, you might find that to be better in Hong Kong because it's more varied up and down. Neither has really great beaches, but because of the world-class attractions, Singapore is going to get the point here. So now we've got Hong Kong 4, Singapore 7. Glenn says, if it was 30 years ago, Hong Kong would have trumped every category. Glenn, I think that's a pretty accurate description. I mean, I feel like Hong Kong is a city a bit like San Francisco, that like there's still some magic to it, but it's in like a state of stasis where it was like great. Everything was great 30 years ago, and then over 30 years, there haven't been a lot of new great things, where Singapore just keeps like going onwards and upwards. Cottage Full of Love to Singapore Singapore does indeed have hiking trails. You're not gonna find them to be a lot of like elevation gain to them, but there's a really neat trail that I like called the Southern Ridges Trail in Singapore that does like take you kind of like above the city. I mean, you can still kind of like see the city around. You can get in the jungle too. There's hiking paths there as well. I just have not been that adventuresome to hike in the Singaporean jungle. I like something that like I can get to food fairly quickly. Alex says that should also be Portland's motto. Everything was great 30 years ago. And Brandon says Singapore puts the world to shame. And then Glenn says about language, people in Hong Kong are not encouraged to learn English, but the Putonghua, the people's tongue, or Mandarin in the case, right? And so yes, I have found I speak a little bit of Mandarin, and so I found that to be useful in getting around Hong Kong. It's not what, like Cantonese is the main Chinese dialect that they speak, but pretty much everybody does understand Mandarin Chinese. Okay. Let's go on to a separate category of to-do, which is casinos. Casinos, Singapore has 2 casinos. The Marina Bay Sands, which was the hotel that I showed you that has the 3 towers and kind of that surfboard looking thing on top of it. And then it also has Resorts World. They're kind of lame, honestly. Like they don't feel like Vegas casinos at all. Hong Kong, on the other hand, doesn't have any casinos itself in Hong Kong, but neighboring Macau, just a 1-hour ferry ride away, is really as close as you're going to get to Vegas outside of Vegas. There's a Venetian hotel in Macau that is like couple times the size, if I feel like, of the one in Vegas. It's huge. It's massive. This hotel is the Parisian hotel, like the Paris hotel in Vegas, except like 3 times the size. I mean, they go all out and bonkers in the casinos in Macau. They don't have the same like fun-loving vibe as in Vegas. Like in Vegas, casinos are really like lively and people seem like they're having a good time. And in Macau, the casinos are very quiet because people are concentrating about really trying to win or cheat the casino out of their money. I don't know, a very different vibe. Like Vegas is a party town, Macau is a serious person's gambling town. That's what that is. But with this, Hong Kong does get a point because the Cotai Strip in Macau really is an amazing destination in and of itself to go see all the casinos that are there. Let's talk about nightlife. In Hong Kong, the subway is, like, it always seems full. Like, you even ride the subway at midnight in Hong Kong, and there's, like, tons of people going around, tons of people around the city at midnight. While Singapore, the subway seems to shut down by, like, 9 p.m. I mean, it doesn't shut down, but there's, like, nobody on it. Pretty much all the shops and restaurants in Singapore really tend to close up around 9. When I landed in Singapore, I had like a nighttime flight. I got into my hotel around 9:30 and I was looking for something to eat, and there were very few options to get any food at 9:30. And so, night owls will really like Hong Kong. With that, Hong Kong does not start really early in the morning. Singapore is much better for early birds. Singapore gets up early in the morning. Hong Kong, there's a lot of nightlife areas. Singapore, I feel like, has one nightlife area, Clarke Quay, right here, which, yes, has Asia's first Hooters restaurant there in Clarke Quay. But if you like nightlife, dun dun dun, then Hong Kong is for you. All right, we've got 6 points to Hong Kong, 7 points to Singapore. We're getting pretty close. Brandon says, why does casinos have a subcategory? I think a lot of people like casinos, so that's why casinos has a subcategory. Like there are people who go someplace because they like to gamble. Emmett says, hey, tell me about Hooters. Hell yeah. All right, there you go. Yip says, there's a bridge now between Hong Kong and Macau, and so yes, you can also take buses between the two if you don't want to take the ferry boat. All right, let's go 16, which is nighttime shows. Both of them have nighttime shows. By the way, I'm not going to give the nighttime shows its own rating, but I wanted to talk about the nighttime shows. The nighttime shows in Hong Kong from Kowloon. So there's this bay in the middle of Hong Kong, and there's Hong Kong Island, which is in fact an island of itself, which is where you see all those buildings. And then there's Kowloon, which is the part that's kind of like connected to the mainland of China. And that's where you can stand and see the nighttime show. And the way the nighttime show works in Hong Kong is all of the buildings, all of these skyscrapers have all these lights on them. And like each building operator independently puts their lights on and operates them and does something to the music that plays. And they're kind of like synchronized all together, but sort of not really. It's this like, I guess like a really interesting cultural thing that like these building owners spend, multi-millions of dollars to put these like flashy fluorescent neon lights that, are only used for like 20 minutes a night for the nighttime show. It's pretty cool though. In Singapore, they also have a nighttime show in front of the Marina Bay Sands in the bay there in Singapore. That's the financial district that you see there in the background. The show at the Marina Bay Sands is much like Fantasmic at Disneyland or Fantasmic at Disney World, like one of these shows where they've got fountains and projections on it and lasers. Like if you're up close, it's cool. It's really neat. Both of them are free. Oh, and by the way, this dome that you see there in the bay, that is the Apple Store in Singapore. The Apple Store kind of like almost like floats in the middle of the bay. Super cool and futuristic looking. All right, and the last category that doesn't get a picture, the last category is day trips and other nearby destinations. And so it doesn't get a picture because I wanted to go back to Google Earth here. And so first to talk about what your day trip options are and what other places to see. So Singapore, right here, you can make a lot of day trips into Malaysia, over here into Indonesia. You can also, you can drive your car through Malaysia and then up here into Thailand, and you can visit some of these other Southeast Asian countries, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos. And so there's a lot around Singapore to do, take as day trips. There's a lot of budget airlines that fly to Singapore Airlines. And so Singapore is a great hub as a jumping off point to other destinations in Southeast Asia. Now, if we compare that to Hong Kong, going 2,500 kilometers over to Hong Kong. What's around Hong Kong? A lot of water. You can you can take a ferry or a bus to Macau. You can go into Shenzhen. You can go into mainland China. But everything else is pretty far away. Taiwan is probably your other closest, day trip. Although, you can certainly get over here to Thailand too, but it's not as close as it is from Singapore. And so with that, for day trips and for just other things to do in the region, Singapore gets the point. All right, and that's the last rating area. So the score is Hong Kong 6, Singapore 8, which means for your first time in Asia, Singapore is where you should visit. Well, that's what I think. What do you think? What did I miss? Am I all out of school? Is Hong Kong really the winner? But for me, it is Singapore. And I could be biased because I've been to Singapore more times than I've been to Hong Kong, but I've been to Singapore more times than Hong Kong because I like it better than Hong Kong for all the reasons that I went through. And that's not to say that I don't like Hong Kong either. Hong Kong is a magical, amazing city. And if you can go to both of them, go to both of them for sure. Brandon says, congrats, Singapore. Emmett says, Singapore smoked them. Chinkin says, is it possible to drive from Singapore to Hong Kong? That would be a long drive, only if you have a water car. R&D Bros says Singapore, yay. Alex says, I had a feeling Singapore would win. And Yip says, Vietnam and Thailand are both far from Singapore. It's far to drive, but you can drive, where you can't drive from Hong Kong to that many places. And there are a lot of budget carriers that go from Singapore to both those places from Changi Airport. Super well connected.
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
All right, fellow explorers, what questions do you have of things I didn't cover, or where do you disagree with me? Chicken Marsala says, Chris, is Tokyo still your favorite? Tokyo still has a special place in my heart. Yeah, if you say, Chris, what's your favorite city in Asia? It's definitely going to be Tokyo. And this was definitely not a Tokyo versus Hong Kong versus Singapore stream. Maybe we'll do one of those in the future. I definitely have some written. I think I've written, I don't know if I should do Tokyo. Here, you can let me know. Would you prefer Taipei versus Tokyo, because we just went to Taipei and we just went to Tokyo, and so I've actually written a Taipei versus Tokyo, or would Osaka versus Tokyo be more interesting as the two major cities in Japan? But this versus kind of series is something I'm considering doing more of, because I think the comparisons are interesting. So definitely let me know if you like this, or if there's a way you want me to change this up to be Chris, have different categories to rate them on, or this is the first out of the gate for the Yellow Productions versus streams. June says Taiwan is so underrated. Gordon says Taipei would be cool. June says do Tokyo versus Seoul versus Taipei. All right, June, I like that one. That's a good idea. And Zachary says, have you been to Hong Kong Disney? I have not yet been to Hong Kong Disney. R&D Bros says, can you please call me Ramen Goated? And my question to you is, what is your favorite theme park in the world? Ramen Goated, my favorite theme park in the world is Tokyo Disney Sea. All right, it's really neat, it's really unique, and so that's my favorite theme park anywhere. Jay says, I'd love Tokyo versus Osaka. Brandon says City Battle Royale. Totally Diamond Painting says Tokyo versus Osaka. Yep, says Taipei versus Tokyo. So Jay goes a different way and says Bangkok is where it's at. All right, Jay, that sounds good too. And I heard all three as well. All right, that's good. Alex says, is the lemonade you're drinking the name chain that's at Pacific City and Huntington Beach? Yes, it is. There are a number of them around Orange County and Los Angeles, and they've got yellow straws. So, like, the whole theming of lemonade is yellow, because they sell lemonade, and lemonade is yellow. Although the lemonades I like there are not the ones that are just the lemonade, but the ones that are flavored like this blood orange hibiscus lemonade. Ramen Goated says, would you ever go to Pakistan? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That Pakistan's not high on my list, not because I have like anything against Pakistan as a country. I have a tendency to go to more I don't know, like if it's the like major touristy cities, and like I feel like I've got like so many videos to do in so many other places but maybe, never know. Zach says, would you like to go to Malaysia? Any plans? I would like to go to Malaysia. On this trip, I considered going to Malaysia from Singapore, and I was looking into like the day trip things. That just like it turned to be it seemed to be so much of a hassle, particularly because I was then continuing on to Taipei afterwards. They were still doing COVID tests, and so I didn't want to like end up in a whole lot more places and not meet up with OC Girl and the Princess afterwards. And so, but I would definitely like to go to Malaysia. Do a video on Dubai. Yeah, I'd love to go to Dubai too. What's the best part of LA? There are a lot of, I think, good parts of LA, but I feel like one of the best parts of LA, you know, Beverly Hills is one of the most famous for being the most expensive. I really like Santa Monica, and that's a different city than Los Angeles, but most people consider it part of LA. So Santa Monica is where it's at. Alex says, do you have any intentions to visit the Philippines? Heard it's a whole different world there. I have too. It's not on the immediate top of the list, but it'd be cool to visit the Philippines too. Rack says, in other world, he's afraid of Pakistan. Maybe. Yeah. Wu Tai says, Dubai looks so awesome. Same with someplace in Saudi Arabia. And I don't know, Nome. You know, one of the things I've seen in one of these Middle Eastern countries is like there's the line they're building, like this city that's like really narrow and really long. I don't know. That'll be neat to see if that thing actually gets built. Casey says, what's your favorite hotel between Singapore and Hong Kong? JW Marriott Hong Kong. That's my favorite hotel between the two. I love the JW Marriott Hong Kong, and I love the like over-the-top doorman and the lounge and just all that stuff. I think it has a great location on Hong Kong Island too. Would I ever go to Egypt? You know, after seeing the video from, it's like, I think the channel's like the best food review show ever or something like that, when he went to Egypt and he got all his like cameras confiscated and like they almost threw him into jail. As a YouTuber, Egypt is not high on my list. They're really down on video, which is not like super cool for me. Racco says, I don't blame you. My cousins are from Pakistan. They don't want to go back. All right, I appreciate that. Conchville Love says, what's your favorite line of hotels? Park Hyatt. Park Hyatts are my favorite, like, brand of hotels. I also like Andaz in the Hyatt chain too. So those are my two favorites. Best place for pizza in New York City. Oh gosh. Like Lombardi's? I think Lombardi's is the name. Like Lombardi's in Little Italy, I think has pretty good pizza if you're looking for like a whole pizza. Like you gotta get like a whole pizza there. Or like Pizza by the Slice. I think like Joe's Pizza in New York City. Like they have a number of different locations on Manhattan. I think Joe's makes pretty good pizza by the slice in New York City. So There you go. TP says, any downside to the JW Marriott in Singapore? The price? It's expensive. And I don't know, you could say a little bit the location in that there's like not a lot of buzzing right around the hotel. I mean, don't get me wrong, the location is good. Just there's not a lot of things that you like stumble right out from your door to. Like you can walk to the Merlion from the JW Marriott Singapore. It's a 15-minute walk. That's all. And I mean, the JW Marriott in Singapore is literally across the street from the Raffles Hotel, which is the hotel in Singapore. So I think the location is good. It's just like, it'd be cooler if it had like a hawker center right next to it or something like that. Have I ever been to Chula Vista? Yeah, for sure. I grew up in San Diego, and Chula Vista is just the city to the south, right next to the Mexican border in the U.S. So I definitely have been to Chula Vista a number of times, mostly to go get pretty good Mexican food down there. Do I have any trouble using my 110-volt appliances overseas? Really, the only ones that we've had I don't have any problems with my computers, electronics, that sort of stuff. The only thing we've had problems with are OC Girl's hair appliances. So her curling iron and hair dryer. And so we have specifically gotten travel models of those that have switches you can flip on them to flip it between 110 volts and 200 volts. And you can get voltage converters. I have a funny story about a voltage converter too. It was actually when we were at the JW Marriott in Hong Kong, and they run on 220 instead of 100, 110, 120. They run on 220, and so they have voltage converters, like these, not like the things that just convert the plugs, but like an actual transformer that the hotel will just let you use. So we got one of those for OC Girl to either use one of those two appliances. I don't remember, hair dryer, curling iron. But it apparently drew enough current through the transformer that it started to smoke. And if you know anything about smoke and hotels and smoke detectors, that when this thing started smoking, I'm like, we need to get this thing out of the room immediately. And so I dragged the thing out into the hallway into a service corridor, because even after I unplugged it, it was starting to smoke, and called the hotel and be like, yeah, so there's a transformer that has a lot of smoke coming out of it. I mean, it might have been ours, but we didn't mean to do it. And apparently clearly we must not be the only ones that happens to. The real drag was then our room was filled with this electronics smoke, which and when you're in hotels that don't have windows to open, it made it for kind of a stuffy night to sleep. Utai says, I shorted out a hotel. He shorted out the hotel with a laptop charger? The hotel went, boop. What happened there? Chicken Marsala says, any plans to go to mainland China? Been once. My mom and I went to Beijing, and we did the Great Wall. I think we went at a good time, which was also with that trip to Hong Kong that I talked about, which was also about 10 years ago. With things going on today, I don't know that I have any immediate plans to return to mainland China. How do I find the cheapest destination to travel in a continent? Google Flights, of course. Just go to Google Flights and type in where you're going. Type in Europe or something like that, and it'll bring back all these flights, and you can figure out what the cheapest one were. Wu Tai says, in the hotel, the power was off for 3 hours. Only my wife knew. Wow, that's something. And Codge Full of Love says, hope you, OC Girl and the Princess, had a great Memorial Day weekend. It could have been better. And so here's where I'll take my moment for those of you on the live stream or anybody who watches the archive that makes it this far. You probably care about Chris and Yellow Productions, and you're like, Chris, why did this live stream announcement come out 1 hour before the live stream? What's going on? My mom had a nasty fall over Memorial Day weekend. Here we have these pay by the minute or ride enabled scooters that litter Southern California streets, and somebody ended their ride of one of them in front of my mom's driveway and just left it there. And so she went to try to move it, and as she grabbed it by the handles, it kind of lifted it up, then the part of the scooter that people stand on down here snapped back this way and whacked her in the shins, which caused her to lose her balance, broke her femur, broke her wrists, and so I was over visiting her in the hospital just before this to see everything was going on, and she knows I do live streams on Tuesday. She usually watches them, but not today. But she's like, "Are you doing a live stream today?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It depends what's going on here." And she's like, "Go do your live stream." So here we are with the live stream today. But if you're watching this, please send my mom some healing vibes. We could definitely use them right now. All right. And if you see these scooters around the streets and one's like in front of your driveway or something like that, be very careful as you move it, because apparently they like have a mind of their own, as it seems. All right. Thank you for all the kind thoughts in the chat. Let's go ahead and do the giveaway, shall we?
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
All right, to win a Yellow Productions crew shirt, my question to you today is going to be, what is the name of the tram in Hong Kong that has the bell on it? What did I call it? Not the official name, but what's the name that everybody calls that tram by? If you can answer that question correctly, you will win a Yellow Productions crew shirt shipped to you anywhere in the world. If you didn't get to win one, well, you can head over to the Yellow Productions shop and pick one up for yourself. And if you're wondering, Chris, when is the next live stream, that maybe you'll send me an update just an hour before, and maybe because that's how life is going right now, I might. So head over to update.yellow-productions.com. You can sign up for the email list and you'll be the first to know when I go live, even if it's only an hour before I'm gonna go live. And if you don't want to buy a shirt, but you still want to support the channel, you can hit that join button down there. You can join, become a Yellow Productions Explorer. Alex Jossie did today. And so everybody in the chat who's got that cool little panda icon next to them, thank you for your support and making quality content like this possible.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Congratulations to TL. You were the first person to say ding ding. Very good. You win the shirt. Send me an email to chris@yellow-productions.com. You'll find the link in the description. I love that Kat gave the answer of Funbox Buena Park, which is where we went with the Spunky Princess just a couple weeks ago, Fun Bounce House. I love that Kel gave the answer Four Seasons, the hotel that we ate the dim sum at. So I love that people are guessing that. Second place was Christine, but first place goes to TL. And for everybody, including James, that says prayers to your mom, I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, before you head to bed like Kathy, definitely I would appreciate a thumbs up on your way out. And so would my mom. All right, well, fellow explorers, as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'm going to see you in the next video.